Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Fabio Palvelli. I'm a designer, and every week on this channel I share a little bit of my life on video, as well as tips and tricks on how to be a better designer. So if this is your first time here, please do consider subscribing. Also, the reason why I'm talking with my hand in front of my mouth is that today I shaved my mustache with my electric shaver, and I miscalculated the size that was set to my shaver, so now I look like this. I've been looking at myself in the mirror for like hours, and I was like, this is terrible, but it's also funny, so I really wanted to make this video before going and shave the rest off. Anyway, today on my channel I'm interviewing Pedro Fernandes, a friend of mine with which we've been talking about doing this interview for probably 2 years now. We're both very busy people, and when we were trying to make it happen, we simply didn't have the chance to do that. Luckily enough, today he had a spot of 1 hour open on his schedule, so we decided to jump on this chat and start talking. I wanted to ask him about the artistic side of making ArchViz images. We went on a very long talkative curve. It was very interesting, it was very inspiring also to hear his story. And I don't know, I'm pretty sure that you're going to enjoy it, because I did, and it's Pedro is a funny dude, and I don't know, I'm just happy that he gave me the chance to do this interview. You probably have noticed by now that I am not able to do these live shows as I was doing last year, and this is mainly because my schedule has become crazy and I simply don't have the time to coordinate this with other designers. But if you know anybody that you would like me to interview on my channel, please leave me a message, let me know, because it'll be cool, and I think that, you know, if it's something worth sharing with the rest of the community, I think that a lot of people are going to be happy about this. Anyway, enough of me rambling. Enjoy this talk with Pedro Fernandes. So 3, 2, 1, and we're live. Pedro, everything
you didn't tell me
okay?
this was live, man.
Yeah, we already have like 15 people watching.
Are you serious? This is live. I was like, I didn't sign on for live, man. I was like,
I'm going to put this in the video.
I gotta edit out all the comments. Why you said live? I was like, what?
I wanted to be like, okay, hey, what's up, John? Everything okay, Mark?
Shit, you nearly got me there, man. I was like, no. Live is your thing. I don't do live. I do pre-edited.
But you know, since I started doing everything that I'm doing, I basically don't have the ability to go live with other people anymore, because, you know, you gotta coordinate it and you have to make it at a specific time. So it's a shame, because I am pretty sure that there will be 100 people dying to ask you questions, you know, especially in this event.
Yeah. I know. The thing is about live, and it's all that preparation, and then you can't have like a moment of silence. So, you know, sometimes you naturally just, you stop thinking and you start looking at the stars or something else. Your phone rings, or actually, again, let me get rid of mine. But you have something like that, and then it's the live thing just goes completely haywire, and you're like, okay, but I think that's part of the magic as well, no?
Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, just to give you an idea, at the moment I'm recording the screen, but my picture is very small, because this morning I wanted to trim a little bit my mustache, and I ended up shaving it all off. So now I look like a terrorist.
by accident, no?
Yeah.
Don't worry, that happens to me, but I leave little bits.
I'm gonna wait to see what my wife is going to say when she sees me tonight.
She'll probably say you look like a year younger without the mustache.
Pedro, thanks a lot for taking the time and for having this chat. Are you ready? Should we get into this?
Yeah, man, let's do it. It's been we've been talking about this for ages, and it's time, dude. It's time.
This has been one of the longest flirtations that I've ever had with somebody. And you know, I was getting like messages, and I was like, hey guys, but Fabio, you're not friends with Pedro? Why haven't you interviewed him? And I was
I had the same conversation with Jeff like this week. I was telling him like I just haven't had an opportunity to speak with Fabio. I really like the guy, but I'm sure he's gonna think like I'm avoiding him or something, or that I don't like him. It's nothing to do with that, man. It's just what I was telling you before. Like sometimes you're in the feeling and you're in the mood, and other times you're kind of just you're so busy and caught up with everything that you just don't have time. And I think one time or another, I've always had like a million things go on, and when you're basically telling me, hey, I'm like, okay, great, let's do it. And then like a million other things come into the priority list, and I go, Fabio, you're going to kill me. I think this is the third or fourth time that we set it up. Yeah. And it was just yesterday, I put a comment on your video and you said, yeah, let's do this. And I said, wow, finally, okay, let's do it. And it was Thursday, but I knew if I keep off putting it for one more day, I was like, no, let's just do it tomorrow if you can. Hell, we probably couldn't have even done it when you told me.
I understand 100%. Like when you told me, actually, we could do it tomorrow, I was like, yeah, that's my chance. I got to do it because otherwise it's going to...
Yeah. The thing is, it's, man, it's been crazy. Like the last 2 years have been like a crazy ride. So we've been building up the company, building the team, not to like a megaloman structure, but it's, we're all kind of buying, and it's just been a lot going on, and we're doing a lot of things that you may know of. I mean, to some extent, you're doing these things on a much bigger scale. We're just doing them on a little scale, and we're kind of doing meetups.
You're doing great. Like I see that you guys are very active. I mean, props to you.
Yeah, I mean, Fabio, I think in this aspect, we share a little bit of the same thing, where we like to... Like we have this social thing, you 10 times more than me, but but we have this social thing, and like building a little bit of community. I mean, it's always hard because we're a company, so it's hard. But I think people see past that, and they see that like put good stuff out there, put good energy out there, it comes back at you. And I think that's it's great to like communicate with people, have like people to come to you and say all the good stuff they say to you as well. Say, this has really transformed my life, or this, it's great. And it's kind of social karma, kudos type thing. And life, I think life is a bit of a balance of everything,
This is exactly what it is, because, I can tell you, to me, when I started to put myself out there and do this stuff for the community, this is when I got also the biggest financial reward as well,
Exactly.
To give, and all of a sudden I was getting back. But we will touch on this also, because I have a couple of questions that I did not write in here in my script, but it's going to be interesting also to hear your experience with like the community and everything, because we talk about this very often about haters and people that watch the stuff and don't appreciate it, and I'm like, these are
haters
like
will be hating
hours of tutorials that you put out for free, and there are still people that kind of complain about this.
Man, when we put out like it's something that's not connected to a tutorial, the first comment or the second comment is like when it's not directly connected to a tutorial is basically, when's the next tutorial coming? And we'll actually touch. I have a world to tell you about all this stuff. I mean, but yeah, I don't want to like go straight into the craziness, so I'll put little notes down as well.
Let me just steer back to the main conversation. All right. So I would like you to introduce yourself a little bit, just because I am pretty sure that this won't be the case, but maybe somebody doesn't know who you are. So please tell me. Who are you?
Oh, man. Who am I? My name is Pedro Fernandez. So my name is Pedro Fernandez. So I'm an architect by profession and by what I learned. I don't know how you say that, but yeah, and I'm one of the directors here at Arqui9 Visualization and the founder. And basically, it's a visualization company just outside of London, and we are dedicated to pretty much creating bulk of our work, still animation, stills, but also animation. Some VR, some 360. But this is the main concept of what we do, like many ArchViz firms. But of course, we give it our own, like everyone, they have their own personal, unique sales points. We have our own as well. You know, we have a certain style, and I think some of your questions even delve on that. And that is a very quick introduction. We have a YouTube as well. I'm going to plug it. So
No, I think actually people should know you more because of your YouTube than because your company. It's not that your company is not famous, but your YouTube is like, I mean, the other day I was reading an article that NASA sent like a spaceship to look for alien life, and they sent like all the languages that we speak. They sent like all the music that we listen to. They sent like pictures of our culture, and they also sent one of your tutorials because they were like,
"Oh man, you're such a bullshit artist."
Okay, I had to do that.
Oh man, yeah, I think the tutorials helped us. Man, it helped a lot get the name out there. I'm very sure of that. And then people kind of, you know, it was 5 years ago I did the first one. There wasn't really much on post-production, so I said, well, man, I'm gonna do something on post-production. And there was Alex Hogref. So there was Alex Hogref, which was doing like stuff for basically for architects. Excuse me. And I was basically, okay, I need to do something. I hadn't even thought as a like business or anything like that. I just said, this needs to be out there, because when I basically started, there wasn't really much. I have to like give some kudos out to people where I work, like Vionics as well, that really taught me a lot. In the post-production, I was just freelance there a month and a half, and that kind of revolutionized my way of thinking. And then, you know, I was already delving into post before then, but then that gave me that next step. And then I just really went into matte painting, discovered all the world of cinema, all the world of how cinema connects with ArchViz, and started really exploring this. And that really kind of, that really built me into this, into architectural visualization and to the concept art that we do, and also putting out those tutorials and showing people, wait a minute, you know, it doesn't have to be created in 3D solely. And there's a big, like, there's every time and that's another thing, every time I put something out, even when we publish, I always get one or two comments, which is like, did you do it in post? Oh man, obviously it's all done in post, but you know, like, you have to use the tools that you have at your availability. So I don't disrespect people who use 3D as a 3D tool and they make it amazing, because that's their thing. I have my own thing, and we have our own thing here as a collective now. And that is, again, not meant in a disrespectful way. It's just meant to kind of promote a little more that there is a variation in style. It doesn't have to be a certain way. It doesn't have to matter if you're just V-Ray, if you're Corona, if you're Octane, if you're something like that. And I think that is kind of where the YouTube started. And of course, I was doing a lot of befores and afters, and I think that's where I can even send you some. And that's where the name started getting out there. I think even before YouTube, because I used to post images of like just grayscale models, and basically those grayscale models then come into, I used to just basically use them as a base, very much like concept artists do with models, and just paint the hell out of it and just go crazy. And I think that's what, you know, that was something different for the time that was being shown. And it was kind of, it was being promoted. Probably there were people doing it already in studios like Luxagon and Bionics, and probably Amir as well, but no one really knew about it so much. And then when we kind of burst on the scene, it was like, hey, wait a minute, you know, we're architects. So we're people who have to execute stuff relatively quickly, and we have to also give it a very fresh and nice look, and kind of keep the artistic vein, because we are visual people as well. So I have no idea.
It's very interesting that you say this thing, because like I experience this all the time on the internet. It seems like people tend to fossilize their opinion based on like, almost like if it was a religious belief that there is only one way to do things. And this kind of like mental bias, sometimes I'm really wondering if this is at the base of like not understanding what creativity is, because creativity, you know, is the ability of like kind of funnel everything that it's happening around you and create something out of it, and this could be a visualization, it could be like whatever, but it's like it's that kind of attitude that defines the creativity of somebody. And very often I get like shocked when people tell me, why did you do this in post-production, or why did you do this in 3D, or why did you use this type of material? And I'm like, seriously, like, once I was having a conversation with a guy that told me that, I used the wrong type of unwrapping. And I was look at the image. The image looks amazing. Everybody's liking this image. Now you're telling me that I did something wrong. Who gives,
Yeah. I mean, you touch on two, I think it's quite interesting. You touch on two things. Firstly, I think you touch on tools and how they're used and how that kind of relates to creativity. And then you touch on also, what was the other thing?
Creativity itself. Okay.
Yeah, creativity itself. So basically, I remember being in uni and I've always loved 3D, but yet we didn't have 3D classes. So I didn't know.
Where did you study?
I studied in Lisbon. So I did 5 years in Lisbon at the Faculty of Architecture. And then I did my final year internship in Melbourne, Australia, where I grew up. And basically, I didn't have knowledge of the tools, but I had a lot of creativity. And that I'd always look at images online and see things online. And I was always like, I discovered actually Mir around the early days. I was like, man, this is mind blowing. How is this even possible? And there was no one talking about, and I guess they had discovered this themselves, but no one really talked about, these things or how this post-production, that's how they got those images to that grade. Because it was a lot of Photoshop images, photos, things like that. But, if you know the tools, it also facilitates your creativity, right? I mean, if you're a carpenter, I always give this example, like if you're a carpenter, you're not going to you can rock up to a piece of wood and just sculpt the hell out of it because you know the tools, and they're basic tools. Again, they're not like the most evolved tools in the world. Yeah. And I think when you have that is, it's amazing. And then another point, and my second point was to talk about what you're talking about, like the critiques of people, like perfection. People, man, I can tell you, like, some people are obsessed with perfection. Perfection in images. I mean, I'm obsessed to a point as well with perfection. But when people start like, that cutout or this or that or the other doesn't look, it doesn't look 100%, or it's not cut out properly, or you've got a pixel or two and you've got a fringe or something like that. I can assure you, if you 100% the majority of the images from a lot of studios, you will find defects. They're at 2,000 pixels because they've cropped it down into almost thumbnail to put online to make it easier to view. But I assure you, if you zoom in on nearly all the images, 95% of the images, you're going to find defects. And that's the thing. People read into this thing of like, let's make it large scale and look at all the defects. But yeah, they appreciate when it's a thumbnail. So, appreciate it for what it is and kind of take it in. You don't know the context in which it was made. You don't know the time it was made. So when you critique it, you really have to be careful and take in consideration this. A good thumbnail generally makes for a great image. I find that people that don't have the experience but have a lot of talent, they'll make good thumbnails. They just, when you blow up those thumbnails, you start seeing all the things that, don't work 100%. But your first impression, those people generally have it. They just don't dominate the tools enough yet to perfect it. And that's with time.
I think that, the way you have developed your style also in making the images, because I've seen tons of your tutorials, it really shows that that a lot of people, don't even think about this artistical aspect to creating visualizations. And, again, let me steer back to our conversation because, now we're touching really on that spot. So I want to ask you, what is, from your personal point of view, that makes an image, a good image? Like, let's start from the very basics.
All right.
I'm going to bother you with the most ignorant questions.
Man, this is really hard to kind of explain, right? It's so relative to each person and such a personal thing. But I think I wrote this down before because I was like, okay, I just quickly ran through some of your questions, but I thought this will probably be a hard one. So a good image for me is the one that satisfies you as an artist, and also satisfies your public and your client. That is the essential of a good image. That satisfies, I mean, then you have these series of things that go into it. And this was profound, though. Mm. It was profound.
It was beautiful. What is your team saying?
They didn't care, man. Jan is laughing. Everyone's heard like me talk 1,000 times. I get quite philosophical in the office. But basically, yeah, a good image is that. And then you have all the other stuff like composition, color theory, experience. All those things come, below it. And with time,
when you personally work on an image, what do you start with?
Okay, so you want to kind of break it down into more technical aspect. Okay, so
it can be also like artistic because maybe you're like...
I think one of the big things we do is, of course, the investigation part, the moods, the references. And we always try and kind of come up with these mood sketches that really kind of show a first impact and that thumbnail type thing. So, we're looking for like compositions, we're looking how the light can make that composition as well, how it's set up within the camera, how certain elements in the picture, like the story that can come together where you have someone being dropped off in front of the building and you've got someone looking at this type of very common, banal things. But this is the first kind of step we do. It's kind of look at the composition, look at how the composition is affected by the lighting, and kind of start thinking about the story in its very initial concepts, and really how all that relates to the architecture. Because the architecture is also one of the forgotten points. We're not just making images, and this is going to touch on your other stuff, which is, I'd wish I could make an image every day in the middle of a desert, a small thing popping out with lots of fog and things like that, but it's really hard. Or vignettes. I would love to do vignettes all the time, but we have to sell a product at the end of the day. So we always I think the hard part is satisfying that sales of a product with the artistry and combining the two together to make this very unique kind of thing. And that's where I kind of got that thing about satisfies you, satisfies your client, and satisfies the public. That's, it's, again, but this is, look at Van Gogh, he never sold anything. And yet, in his life, never sold anything. He was so way ahead of his time. So that is probably from artist/business side, because it kind of connects all in one a little bit. And we are kind of, I would love to just do this all day. But we have, we have bills to pay as well, and we have a team to support. So, yeah, I think that is pretty much where we start to really create those types of images.
Do you rather work in the very beginning with like small scale images just to control the composition and then you expand? Or let me ask a little bit about your workflow.
Yeah, so I think blocking things out, just like concept artists do, is very important. Kind of understanding how the image functions in big blocks. And again, we're looking at like, you can look at 1,000 pixels by 500 pixels type image. So you don't need more than that for the initial phase to really kind of get you going. And then, towards the end, so as the progress goes along, and it's not because we do it in this way, but like in a good way to think about it is keep upping your scale of pixels. That's our medium, the way we express ourselves in. Keep upping it up as you go along, and you keep adding more and more things. So it couldn't be closer to a painting than what we do couldn't be closer than that. We start off with our base. You know how they just paint the whole thing like a neutral color for the sky.
Bob Ross style.
Yeah, exactly. Bob Ross. I love Bob Ross.
I love it.
And then basically you start, giving in the big shapes. And then when the big shapes come together, you start, okay, but wait a minute. What about we have some seagulls here? We're quite close to the beach. What about if the light hits this facade in a certain way? So all this is kind of happening one at a time, but at the same time in unison with a clear idea Well, it doesn't have to be 100% clear. I also believe like we do a lot of experimentation. It doesn't have to be clear straight away. Sometimes you have to really experiment. It's like, you go to you have an opinion about a country, then you visit on holidays. That opinion can be completely changed because you got there. So I find it difficult sometimes to the thing where people just, I have this idea, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to impose this on this site because it has to happen like that. But why? I think there's also, you have to let some time for creativity and like for exploration.
Yeah. I think this is a very good point that you made. I think that sometimes, like we talk about the ego from a financial and business point of view, but we also talk about ego from an artistic point of view. Like when people don't want to give up on an idea because they think, wait, there is potential in it, when actually you can get more out of something if you decide to pivot, and to embrace. I think that, going back to Bob Ross, he calls it happy accidents.
Yeah. I talk about this all the time when I'm doing the tutorials, the happy accidents of like letting things happen and embracing them. I think some of our best images sometimes come from that. The happy accidents, like an overlay that gets hit into a different layer. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Or a layer you don't connect, the levels layer you don't connect, and it's connected to something else. You're like, oh, wait a minute. That just gave a really interesting tone. And because again, when you're working on an image so long, you start to develop this, and we human beings are an amazing species, right? We adapt to everything. We learn to live with everything. We learn to abstract ourselves from the world. And I think like when you're working on something, you start to get this abstraction. Sometimes you're really in it. And I think it's that artistic thing, you're really in it. But at the same time, when you've been working on something for 3 days, 4 days, you start to gain a certain familiarity that your brain starts filling in all the blanks of what's wrong and right, or adapting to it. And you're like super, this is great. I'm loving it. And then you sleep over it and you got fresh eyes, you work on something else, you come back to it and you're like, what the hell happened here, And I think that's one of the big things as well with quick timelines as well, because you need that extra time. But you don't always have the play, but you need that extra time sometimes to do your own internal review. And we get used to the images, we flip them, we do whatever. And we have to find strategies to combat that, getting used to it. We change amongst artists, and we try and get other people on it. But yeah, with the familiarity of an image, it starts to build upon you. And then I'm always telling the guys as well, don't fall in love with your images. Like, because once you fall in love with it, you think everything is perfect and you don't have a critical eye towards it. So you should always have a kind of critical eye, enjoy the process, but always remember in the back of your mind, like you have to also have a critical eye that's looking upon this.
Well, man. This is really like, it's deep, it's introspective almost.
Oh man,
let me ask you something out of curiosity. I'm sorry that I'm interrupting.
No, you go for it.
We'll go back to that, but because I'm curious to understand how the matte painting, which is probably the biggest component to your process. Does this give you problems with like client changes, the client feedback? How do you manage that? You work mostly with architects, right?
Yeah. The majority of the studios we work with. So let me put this question to you in a different format.
Yes.
So a lot of people ask us that. It's the most asked question ever. So what happens when you have changes? There's always a smart ass that comes up with that, but says it in a way like, I can change this. So you've modeled your interior. All of a sudden, the architect goes, okay, I don't like that wall. I want to, you've spent 3 days modeling a couch that I wanted, or that specific type of furniture. I don't like it. I want to change the whole thing. Or you've gotten it from the client, but in a really bad mesh, and then he wants to make changes to it. And he says, I don't like it. I want to change it. I mean, what do? You change it, right? You find a way and you change it. And this is kind of the only thing is people put in their mind that this is like a really hard thing. It's not a hard thing. And if you need to change, you change it. The only thing is you have a series of steps you do along the way to avoid those changes and for the client to really sign off on things. So you have to also get that permission to sign off. Once things are signed off, and if there are changes, of course, if you need to quote more, you quote more. It's not really, I couldn't say it's a big deal. And to be honest, in the way we work, we really like sometimes the feedback when clients say something like that. And it just, we kind of go, oh, wow, you know what? They had a point. They had a point here to change it, and this way works better. Because, you know, we're not the owners of the universe and all-knowing people. So sometimes it is good to have this kind of chat and understand what they, you know, on the other side, we have very educated people as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm very happy that you're saying this, because I think that very often these questions, they come from people that don't have the experience from the client management side. And it's not something that you say, oh, you gotta be a manager of clients. No, it's more of a question of saying you develop a certain degree of control over the years, over the process. So you know what to expect, you know what could happen. So you're kind of like prepared. And I think that probably the problem exists because people tend to go into this business right after graduation, because they're like, I made a rendering for my graduation, I've done a tutorial from Pedro, I'm a visualizer.
No, I think that's true. I think that's very true. I mean, yeah, and now you're touching on a lot of other things, like getting into this and how it all works. But yeah, I think there's a kind of misconception about those types of things. I think what you're doing, especially with your YouTube channel, is you're giving people, I think, an idea of what's to come, and kind of demystifying a little bit of what's out there. In that, you know, people think it's one way, and then they go, "Oh, okay, wait a minute, you know, it's not exactly that way." And I think there are a lot of common misconceptions about what we do. And, you know, getting started in this. And I was talking with this again with Jeff about everyone, you know, everyone who does this is very passionate about this, and they have like a huge passion.
Yeah.
I don't think that has to be synonymous. And I don't say this in a bad way, but I don't think it has to be synonymous. Well, I love this, I want to start my own company straight away out of uni. That is if you don't want to sleep at night, I suggest you do that. But there is this kind of misconception in the world going on that, you know, I have to do this way. And I think it has to be that way. I think there's people who love everything. Some people are really quiet and just love to create. Some people don't want those burdens that come with that.
Yeah.
But again, then there are places for everything and everyone, and people who enjoy a certain thing, you will find it, but you have to chase what you want from a job as well. You know, you have to adapt a little bit, but also chase that place that identifies with you. And if you are just constantly bored all the time, do your own thing. If that's the thing you want to do, if you feel like you've got a lot more to go for it, that is the way to do it. But there are such an endless amount of possibilities, and especially for architects, man, architects are, you know, you're like built for war when you come from architectural school. You're ready to go to war and to, you know, work for NASA for some kind of thing, because you, like, you know, you've been without night's sleep. You've experienced people critiquing your work to the extreme of what human limits can do. You've gone through anxiety. You've gone through, you know, I say you're built for war. It's literally being built for war. And, you know, the design in general and artists classes, that's what you do, man, because you have to deal with some hardcore critique from like a very personal level, you know?
Let me, you know, let's take a couple of step back. Like when you
start... Oh, you'll have to step back all the time with me. Yeah. You just give me a little bit and then...
No, but I'm curious because there are a couple of things that I want to know. One of them is, how did you manage to develop your style? And in a way, before we answer that, how did you manage to go into ArchViz? Because the way you have done it seems to me to be like... I don't know. I don't want to do
Good for it.
Giving you 100 compliments online because, I want you to feel happy and stuff. But when I look at your style and when I look at the way you execute things, I say to myself, this is what the original ArchViz style is. And I know that this doesn't make any sense, but in a way it's a style that it's very recognizable, and it's a style that has been copied 100 times and more. So, I'm curious to understand how did this whole thing happen, because I think that there is more than just making an image in this. You know what I mean?
No, it's, man, bloody hell, where do I start?
Make everything more complicated.
That's why it's good to do it early in the day. I told you. Basically, I've always had a passion for this. I can see your dog, man.
She just came. She was like, what are you doing?
Oh, man. Yeah, I basically got started. So in uni, I always had a passion for creating. And I always we had CAD classes. And so in the first year straight away, I was like, we couldn't use CAD. We had to do everything by hand. But I was like, I'm going to do everything in CAD. And then I'm going to just copy this trace over the top, because I was doing all these oblique things, very crazy stuff. And basically always had that passion there. And I think as I started to experiment with 3D in uni, I just found this love for it. And I'll create like crazy stuff, like mirrored stuff. And I knew nothing. It was like just hit render and see what happens, put some lights. But yeah, it kind of developed. And then when I did my first internship...
That was when? In 2000?
Man, 2004, something, 2003.
So we're talking about 15 years.
Yeah, probably. Okay. Oof, man.
So when people are watching this and they're going to look at your images, remember that number, 15 years.
Yeah, man. And it's nothing compared to many others. So, but yeah, it was probably 15-year process. I mean, if I have to trace this back, I've always had a passion for it. When I was 14, I started doing... So much more years before that, like I started already doing video stuff and started doing logos for friends. So passion for design technology was always there. And then in uni I discovered that. So then I went to my first internship. I did a lot of 3D stuff for them. Like the first day in the interview they asked me, do you know SketchUp? And basically, yeah, I'm beautiful. I'm really good at it. I didn't say I was good at it, but I was like, yeah, I know it. No worries. But I'd used it in uni, but like I would model in CAD, go to SketchUp and take like screen pics and stuff like that. So I didn't really know the whole thing really well. Anyway, first day, they sat me down in front of SketchUp and they're like, oh, okay, we have this town planning thing we have to do. We need all these models. I was like, what? Can I use AutoCAD? Yeah, you can use AutoCAD. They had like a basic version, couldn't do 3D stuff, but so I was like, oh, damn. So I remember I sat down at like 9. I did not get up the whole day. I had a coffee. I spilled coffee on my first day, like just all over the table. I was cleaning it with my mold skin, and man, it was crazy. Anyway, they sat me down, and then I was like, oh, great. I love this, but it's going to be hard. So anyway, a couple of... one of my colleagues, she helped me out a little bit and gave me some pointers. I did tutorial. I was on a mission, like super stressed. My heart was beating all day, like I was like, ugh. Anyway, it came like 6 o'clock and I hadn't even gotten up for lunch. So imagine, right? I was dying. And then the boss comes up to me and he's like, Pedro, it's time to go home. What have you done? And I printed it out and I finished somehow. I don't know how. It was like one of the toughest days of my life. I finished. She was like, yeah, I'm very happy with this. Great. So I went home that night straight away, bang into SketchUp and learning. I was learning it like crazy. But I was like, yeah, I really love this. I really love the whole 3D developing of it. And then they developed a lot through SketchUp. So we're talking like 2008. They did a lot of stuff through SketchUp. And I really discovered SketchUp as a design tool, not as a visualization per se, but then I started to get into Cocothea, the rendering programs, the free rendering programs, and then gradually V-Ray with CG Architect stuff, the old stuff they had on V-Ray. and it all kind of developed. Then I was doing all the online competitions. I was working on personal portfolio whilst I was doing my own architectural stuff. And then came the day I had to choose, architecture or ArchViz. And I said, I'm going to go to ArchViz, which was a bit of a shock. But I said, this is the future. This is what I love to do every day, not documentation and stuff like that. This is like a passion. And I can see it even when the guys come in and all the team, and I can see like that passion, that resounding thing that I had in all of them. And now, like, we're talking about us, but the images are made by everyone here. It's not like I have to put a disclaimer. It's not me. It's everyone. And it is transmittable. When you run things, it is transmittable to be able to as a collective run something like this. And people can't distinguish if it's me that worked on it, if it's Mateo, Danny, Lucas, Timon, Jan. No one can distinguish, and that's what I like. And that's the thing as well, the big thing, because people say Pedro. Now it's less. It's Arqui9. And then that was also, a transition period. But yeah, I mean, that's how I got into ArchViz. And then, I made my break into London by sending portfolios everywhere. And I sent them to 6 places. I got like 5 interviews.
Were you still in Melbourne back then, or?
So I went to Melbourne. After the year in Melbourne, I went to Lisbon. I stayed in Lisbon. And then I moved down south, and I was like surfing, enjoying life, working. And I was doing stuff for that boss of mine in Australia, which to this day is still a client.
Really? That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And he's a dear friend and a client and a mentor. And that was the story. And then, that day that I chose this, I was like, that's what I'm doing. And then I sent the portfolios, came here for interviews. My wife was already here. We'd be going out, and I was like, let's do this. Let's go for it. And I moved like in a week. It was like crazy. I said, let's do this. This is the center of the world to be doing this. So I went to like mini studios. I freelanced everywhere. Bionics, F10 Studios, CG. What was it? Crystal CGs. Yeah, people.
But that was in China.
Yeah, but they had an office in London.
Oh yeah, because they were trying to do like the Olympics or something.
Yeah, I worked on some of the Olympic stuff and I met all these crazy creative people. I worked at Cityscape as well. I just design solution.
You did the tutorials for Digital Tutor.
That's actually how I got into the tutorials, to be honest.
Okay.
They contacted me and they said, "Hey, you want to do tutorial? Let's do it." Yeah, no worries. And then I was like, okay, I love that. Maybe I'll do shorter ones for YouTube. And I did them. And it was, that was actually, that was like
so cool. Like if they never approached you, probably you would not have a YouTube channel.
Well, I don't know. Can I say that? But
abort.
Nah, I'm joking. But yeah, I mean, they were like, they saw the thing, and my tutorials are still there, so you guys can check them out. And it's pretty complete tutorials, and they're like a good base. But yeah, it started there. It was pretty much probably they gave me the thing of like, and I'd done in the past like. I wanted to get into teaching at some point. So I did this course in Portugal, like that's, it's called Curso de Formadores, which is to form people to be, not teachers, but not professors, to teach, let's say that.
Like being a tutor or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I did that, and I helped a lot. And then I was like, wait a minute, I have a passion for this. I enjoy it. So yeah, and when I did that for digital tutors and I saw the feedback as well, I was like, wow, man, I would really love to extend this to a bigger audience. I started doing little things, and those little things then started getting, and in the beginning it was just, if you hear the first ones, they're horrible. They're like with my webcam recorded, and it was like in my house, my desk in the living room. It was like a really crappy setup, and they were horrible. But the thing was there, the essence was there of what I wanted to do, and just did it, man. Sometimes you don't have to have all the best tools in the world. You just got to go for it. And I'm of this opinion, especially with young guys. I see them like what tools do you have? What this, what that? You know, you don't have to have syntax. You don't have to have even a Wacom to start. But Wacom is good, intros. And I'm not supported by them, but it's great. You know, syntax, yeah, they can make it a bit easy, but you know, the base is there. You know, I've always had my Wacom intros. I have a syntax. I have all this stuff. And the Wacom is like my tool, and it's traveled more than anything I've ever used, and it's kind of, yeah, it's my go-to, and it's because I'm used to the shape, I'm used to that size, I'm used to the feel of the pen, so I'm taking down the amount of elements that can reduce how I can interact directly with it.
Yeah, makes.
So I'm going off again.
No, but it makes total sense, and actually, okay, because there are a lot of other questions that I want to ask you, but believe it or not, we're already 45 minutes in this conversation.
Yeah, I know it goes long.
Let me just ask you, how long did it take you to figure out the business side of things? Like, you know, you started on your own when you did your company, then you build it to a very small team, and then the team grew over time. Can you tell me a little bit about that part of the process?
Yeah, so this, I mean, I've worked for myself for about 10 years, more or less. I've always been quite, I don't want to abuse the term entrepreneurial. In, you know, I used to sell little things at high school. I used to do this. So I've always had this kind of business motivation. But everything has happened so gradually, you know, I can say, you know, more than 10 years, like 15 something years it's been in the making. You know, I DJ'd for a while when I was younger. I had always this thing of like continuously working and doing things, but it's, you know, it was very gradual. So I started off, I've never had a contract in my life, a permanent contract. I've always been freelance or something like that. I graduated when the biggest recession in modern history came, which was fantastic. And there were no jobs, nothing out there. Like you couldn't go and, you know, apply and get a job because there weren't any. And you were competing with everyone. And I think that this day and age, especially for the younger crowd, they can't imagine how good they got it, you know, because it was hard. And all the people of my generation that you've interviewed, you know, and they say the same thing. They always talk about the recession. It's a big thing, especially, you know, I was in Portugal. Let's not forget where we were at, you know, and that, you know, that kind of put me in the fight or flight mentality. And I had to really kind of find my way out of it. And I did by freelance, taking all the jobs. It didn't matter if they were crappy, if they were good, and putting my heart into everything. So architecture, when I was doing architecture, I used to do two projects. Project that I liked, show to the client, they never liked it. They're like, nah, okay, I like, but we're talking like really small, you know, villas and stuff like that in Portugal. And they would go, it's nice, but, you know, I want something traditional. I'll be like, oh my God, you know, so many years killing myself over this. And so then, okay, all right, cool. ArchViz was a bit different in that, you know, it let me actually do my own thing and kind of showed people, and people were like, I like that. That's cool. So that kind of already got me into that. But yeah, but slowly, so freelancing, doing a lot of the jobs, and slowly being able to curate a little bit of the jobs that I was doing, bringing on my first person, which, you know, they I won't mention names, but yeah, two guys I brought on started their own company under my name, and they're working for me 7 months. So they worked 2 years and 7 months that they built their own business whilst working for me with non-competes. Left me in the dry, so I had no one. And I had to build Arqui9 back up again. We had like 3, 4, and they were like, they left me for dry. The two of them were friends, started the business. I discovered this. They left me for dry, and I had to build everything up again. Like, as you can imagine, we're 2 years, you already have something developed, a mainframe. So then I built everything up again, found a couple of amazing people to work with us. I mean, we had Pete, we have Mateo, we have Timon, Lucas, which were the base of the team, and that are with me to this day. And that we, you know, And I never stopped being the same person. I never stopped being like humanistic, and my approach towards things is not, it's just business at the end of the day. No, my approach is different. We're all humans participating in the same space. And, I didn't become regretful or resentful because of that, and didn't change my way of being at all. And I think that's kind of why we are where we are at. You go through the difficulties, you understand everything. That's why I say, if you want to build a business, get ready to not sleep at night and get ready to have a feeling here in the stomach of permanent. That said, it's also one of the most rewarding things on earth.
True.
It's what I'm always telling the guys, like how honored I am to bring together this group of individuals that create amazing work, and it transpires to the clients. It comes across and they feel it, because the passion and dedication we all have for each other, we also have for them.
It's like creating a family, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a family. And, we've got some scale now. We're like 8 people, and we still got that feeling. And I think that this is, when you do this feeling and you have all these things, then you can also create great art. Art all has to, this has to be well, that has to be well. And the art and the business also come together. That said, you also have to have a business mentality, and I've had to learn a lot through the years.
Did you have to sacrifice it sometimes, like the artistic side of things, in order to favor the business side of things?
I think so. Sometimes you have to do that. I think you have to. So life is made of compromises.
Yeah,
it's a compromise, but at the same time, with the experience in the years, you start to understand, you start to see a little bit further down the line, and you start to have more understanding of the future rather than the immediate present.
Yeah, that's a very good point that you're making.
Yeah, and I think people build for a year, for 6 months, for 3 months. Some people tend to look towards, in the beginning, I always built for like 3 months. I know I can survive 3 months. 2 months, I'll be alive, and I don't have to worry about rent. Now that's slowly, you start projecting more and more forward, and you start projecting 3, 4, 5 years, and you start to make your business plan a little more in that. Anything can happen, man. So yeah, it's been a great school of life.
Tell me one thing. If there was one of the things that you have learned up to recently that you say, I wish I knew that 10 years ago, what would that be? And it doesn't have to be necessarily like a business thing. It could be like workflow thing, or how to manage your clients. What was one of the things that you would,
Oh yeah, I would tell myself, definitely be more patient. That no one will die at the end of the day for your art, over your art. And I think in the beginning, I was like, with some clients, I was like, no, it has to be this way. And but the clients, people in general, be more patient and understanding. I think that's kind of the big thing. And to nothing is unfixable except death, unfortunately. But, if it all starts here, and when you change this, you can change the rest. So I would say, Pedro, calm down. It will all be fine.
I think that especially for like the youngest ones, the biggest problem is that, say, when client modifications come in, and say that, they accept them because they see that there is sort of like an advantage to do what the client is saying. Very often people don't realize that they have to pace themselves and say to the client, yes, I'm going to do it, and you're totally right, this has to be done, but it will take 2 days. I cannot give it to you by the end of the day. For example, because this has happened also to me. I remember one day, one of my bosses, he was going the day after for a meeting to China, and we had to visualize and we had to visualize the entrance of this like 4 million lounge, which basically was a round tube made of gold. And he was like, okay, I'm gonna be leaving in like 2 hours. And I remember me sweating, like working with the render. And I was like, I'm gonna get fired, And the reason why that was my fault, it's because I should have been able to say to him, there is no way I can do it, if we want to do something else, otherwise I'm not going to be able to deliver it to you. It's not like I don't want to. I'm simply not going to be able to. It's as simple as that. And sometimes, it's just a question of like taking that little bit of like practicality. That's what one of the things that I always say to people: be practical about everything. Think, be logical. I don't know. I think it's one of those questions that doesn't really have.
So, I think what you're saying is basically, people get flustered in the beginning, kind of thinking that this is like the end of the world when you get changes and stuff like that, right? I think that's more or less what you're touching on. I mean, I have a motto: do your best, and that's the best you can do at the end of the day, and everyone will understand when you do your best.
Yeah, it's true.
You start doing 50 million things, everyone's going to understand you were doing 50 million things and not working or what you should have been working. So I have a motto, and to every client, to everyone that works with us, we give it our best, the best we can. And that, 95% of times it's fantastic and goes above, but, we do get crazy stuff thrown at us as well. But also, we do our best and we understand who's on the other side. And I think they understand us as well. Then you're touching on types of clients and types of business. When you're at the beginning and the lower end of, the fish pond, and you're trying to get your first jobs, you're like getting, not all the time, but you're getting clients that are coming to you exclusively on pricing. You're the lowest of the bunch. We want cheap, and we're going to treat you like dirt and with no respect. And when you get that, unfortunately, I've gotten them as well. In the beginning, I got a lot of those. But nonetheless, like if you show them your human side, and I think you should. Some people won't bow to that, but most people, if you show them, okay, look, we're in this, we're doing our best. You have to understand who's on this side. We're people, we're working as hard as we can. This might not be your expectations, but you're getting what you paid for. So this, once you get along and you get more experience and your company becomes bigger, this kind of becomes implicit when people come to you because of reputation, et cetera, et cetera. And that kind of, people tend to have a bigger respect because they've seen, okay, you've done this, and that, and the other. If this is going badly, wait a minute, because this might be us on the client side. So, I mean, it's like a tango, you tango with the client, and you lead, they lead, and it's kind of this dance, and this dance has to generate something quite cool at the end of the day, and that's what we're all trying to make. And I guess that's life, right? We're in this constant dance of equilibrium. We're always like in a motion and a constant revolution, and we try and find our base point, and we try and keep there with all the oscillations. So yeah, man, I'm going again.
Don't worry, I love this because the thing is that the reason why I do these talks is because I really want to show the side that goes beyond the display of a 2D image, because very often people associate you with the person that did the render, and that's who you are, and that's wrong. There is so much more to making an image, like the fact that you were telling me before that you started to get interested in movies and you were throwing this in, and then you told me the story of how you built your company, and I'm like, these are all variables that you have to put in the pot to make an image. That's why there cannot be an ultimate tutorial on how to make an image. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And it's just with time it gets easier.
Yeah.
It gets easier. I mean, a lot of our inspiration, we didn't touch on this, but a lot of our inspiration also, our inspirations come from, I think it was one of your questions, so I'm going to advance right into it.
Go for it.
Our inspiration comes a lot from film, cinema, photography, but a lot of it is really concept art, and we really have this huge, everyone here has the love for it, and we have this client. So you've seen, I mean, we're starting to get noticed for it a lot more, but we've seen like the stuff we do, and basically that stuff is very conceptual and very concept art. So we had this client that came to us once, and they're not once, many times, and they're our client, and they basically emailed a very simple email. I was like, there's emails that you almost think, nothing special. And basically they said, we have a project, we really like this. And they put the art of Arqui9 right? Which is where we have all our artistic experimentation, not all, but some that we put up once in a while that the guys work on in the studio, or that, in our free time we can do. And we wanted to look more or less like this. And we're like, I'm sorry, but I think you got it wrong. Our portfolio section is this one, and this is not. No. We want this, not that. We came to you specifically for this because not many people are doing this. Not many people can do this, and not many people do this type of stuff. Specifically, you have a whole section of this style that we want. And they're like, all right, cool. So we had this, we have this thing now, which we call like architectural conceptual art, where it binds the two together. And they're actually one of Zaha Hadid's main firms they're called New Technique. And one of the main firms they use for all their engineering projects. Not all of them, but I assume they do a big part. And they're like, we want to show this 20, 30 years in the future with our building systems. And these guys are amazing, right? Like, they're like way ahead of their time. They're fellows at Cambridge. They've got so many, the intelligence is just huge. And basically, we want to do this. So in the beginning, it was like, whoa, where are we going to go with this? Because no one ever like wants to do this stuff. People just reference it's cool, but we don't want to do it. So we started developing that, and now we have like tons of those images that we will see. We might put into a book coming soon. And it's kind of become an art of its own. And, it's cool because we got to experiment, not just, we do the professional ArchViz stuff that you kind of see, and we always try and give it our unique look. But a lot of this stuff as well, we like to experiment. And those are the types of experimentations we really enjoy as well. And I got some books because just to give you a flavor, these aren't like unique, but all the Simon Stelhung stuff is amazing. I think you have it, right?
Yeah.
yeah. It's just amazing. It's incredible. This is just quick stuff off the wall, of course. Although the book, I'm going to be honest, it's not fantastic.
No, it's not the best one, that one.
Nah, I expected a lot more.
I was a little bit disappointed also. Like,
I definitely thought, and of course, Sydney, right? So, and we have the three of them, but these are just a few. We have much more back there, and these kind of keep us fresh, keep our ideas fresh. They keep, I did a series of experimentations. My first, and that's what it was known for. My first stuff. You probably saw the Vimeo video I published the other day. It's like 7 years old. A lot of the first stuff I did was all like concept art. I was trying to get into to film. I thought at a time I'm going to go into film. I actually got. At a time I got invited to go to work on for Electronic Arts, on the Battlefield stuff. Also I didn't go. And also for Access Animation to do matte painting for the Halo stuff that they were putting out, the trailers. I was like, and then I was like, but wait a minute, I get to do this all the time. So, I was doing tons. I have Tron stuff. I have video animation, matte painting stuff. And this was like 7 years ago, and I don't think many people were like mixing the art like that at that time. Now it's very common, but at that time I was like, man, I was blown away. Like Phoenix had this, and a lot of my inspiration came from that. And I was like, just got really into it. Yeah, that's it.
Pedro, we are 1 hour and 5 minutes in.
All right, man. Did you want to end, or what's?
I would say we wrap it up because you have answered way more than I was asking.
No worries, man. It took time, man.
No, I love that. I love that. I really hope that people will find the same value, because to me, the reason why I take the time is because, the impact that I'm trying to have on the masses, people are still a little bit reticent from believing what I have to say. The reason why I'm doing this, like 80% of the reason why I'm doing this, is because this is an enriching experience for myself. Like, listening to people like you, it just goes to, to prove that there is still so much that people should know about the entire industry. And I don't know, hopefully it will take a little bit of time, but we will be able to spread the message and motivate people to do things a little bit better, you know? Because at the end of the day, we want to preserve this. We don't need people to bid on the lowest project, you know what I mean? We want people to push the boundaries and make it better. And I don't know, talks like this, I hope they can help the discussion.
Yeah, I think it's, it's kudos to what you're doing, and it's incredible. I think it's so hard to change a market because there's always someone who's going to do it cheaper and faster. That's one thing I've learned. Like, you just have to be unique and up your game, really, I think, to compete. And that's what we try and do all the time, you know. We try and invest time in learning, invest time in experimenting and things like that. And, you know, price is, you mentioned, like, you had a question which was really good.
Oh, yes. I wanted to ask it to you. Okay. Because, you know, like, I wanted to, for this discussion, to stay on the artistic side. But since, you know, you're from Portugal and I'm from south of Italy, there is one big misconception with, like, artists that, you know, if you're from a poor country, then you should be charging according to the market. So, you know, if you're in a poor country, you should charge less money. And I'm like, a person like Pedro that can produce a value that, you know, it's unbeatable in a way. How does this work in those cases? You know, what do you think?
Oh, man, it's so subjective. This is so hyper subjective. It's really a tricky one because markets are a crazy thing, right? Markets, they're going to regulate themselves. You can't regulate a market.
No.
Right? It's not even, you can't monopolize it, right? You can't lobby it. You can't get together with all your friends and say, we're all going to charge this. You can't do that. It's against the law. But there's, you know, what you're creating, I think, is awareness of what's out there. For there not to be competition at the lowest, but to be competition at a, you know...
At the fairest.
At the fairest, I think that's the correct word. And I think, you know, coming from Portugal or Spain or whatever, there is kind of, the clients have an expectation of, some clients, like, they might actually pay international firms what they charge, but at the same time, they might want cheap in their country. They think, okay, here the living costs are much less. We're going to have to pay much less. Now, let's imagine that everyone in that country says, but wait a minute, we all kind of have this thing where we're not going to charge, which you can't do. Again, it's illegal. You can't, like, get all together and create. I think it's, Jeff explained this to me, so I'm not the biggest professional on this type of stuff, but at the same time, like, if they all have a certain know-how that, you know, we cannot, it's not good for us to charge below, let's say, that X amount, or to go dive deep into the barrel, and to up our game a little bit, we can all probably make a better living. But it's really complex, Fabio. That question is so tricky because, I mean, markets are a crazy thing, right? You know, they compete.
I think the way I see it is that we cannot use any kind of, like, argument to justify the run to the bottom. Meaning, yes, you know, Portugal, like Italy, they're cheap markets, and people will expect, you know, to get a rendering for, say, $300. But that doesn't justify that then people will have to rebate on that for 100, you know? Because this is the mentality. I mean, I think that no matter what, people should start questioning the status quo of everything. Because to a certain extent, I do understand that somebody, you know, say, I live in this country, I need to make ends meet in my own country. But what if you start offering a Ferrari quality for the price of a Fiat? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you can't do that. You will drive yourself bust if you do that, and the quality of your product goes down automatically with that. And the value, don't forget, it's perceived value of things also drives down. I have a great story for you about this. So when I was starting off a few years ago, this guy came to me from Canada and basically said, we have these buildings, we want to build them. How much are you charging? It was like right when I was, how much you charge for 5 years? And I was like, it's X amount. And he says, and he comes back and then he says basically, okay, I have a firm. Can you lower your price? I was like, actually, it wasn't even in Canada. It's another firm, but I'm not going to reference any names. And I said, and they said, oh, but we have someone who can do it for this. And in my experience at the time, because I was just starting off, I said, okay, well, they obviously want me to do it because they want me to match it. And actually, at the time, I didn't have much work at all. I was just probably myself starting off freelancing, or no, I had someone else. Actually, it was already firm, and this person was a one solo band, and actually was living in a country that we could say the cost of living was relatively low. And we're in England, we're close to London, so our wages, all that we pay is like quite high. So anyway, the guy comes and says, okay, and this is like for the guys who are listening to this to not fall into this error. So they say, okay, so he does for X amount. And I say, okay, well, oh, man, okay, well, you know, I didn't have much going on. I didn't say that, but I said, well, okay, let's do that on this case. And then the guy comes back and says, oh, the other guy's lowered his price. And we're going with the other guy. And I'm like, they used me as a pawn to kind of, do you understand? To go that way, and then the other guy automatically has to go that way. So it's a bit to the bottom.
You
know, you start in this type of thing.
You know, I sat down with a group of people, and they had a coach telling them exactly these strategies. That's why I make my YouTube videos, because I know that the other side, they are equipped with the manipulation tools to get as much as possible for their money from the service industry. That's why I say to people, it's not about the art, because you might have favored your art when you were able to establish yourself economically. But until you don't establish yourself economically, it's a war, you know? It's run your business and do it in the proper way.
Every day it's a war.
It's a war every day.
Just some battles are smaller and some are larger.
Yeah, you're totally right. Pedro,
but that's cool.
Let's wrap it up. It's 1 hour, 11 minutes. I think we've done enough.
I'm blasted for the day now.
Don't go anywhere. I'm gonna stop the recording. Thanks a lot for doing this. All the links to your work will be in the description in the video.
All right.
Don't go anywhere. I'm gonna say goodbye to you. Just give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Cheers, man.
Cheers, man. Thank you very much. It's been awesome. It was quite fun.
My pleasure.